Welcome to the Joy in Purpose podcast. My name is Lola. On today's episode, I had the pleasure of having a conversation with Isabella Boateng. It was a fabulous conversation. We talked about the importance of waiting on God during your single season. So this is a must listen to episode. Whether you're single or not, I believe that you would learn so much from our discussion. Before we get into the interview, I would like to tell new listeners a little bit more about this podcast. Stay tuned. Like I said earlier, my name is Lola. I am the creator and host of this platform. Joy in Purpose is a podcast dedicated to conversations about career development and mental health. I am a doctoral student in a psychology program. So I also want to remind you that this podcast is not a replacement for therapy. It is for educational purposes only. Please share this episode with your friends, subscribe, leave a review, and tell your friends and family. Before we get to the interview, I wanted to share with you guys that something was off with my microphone. You can still hear me, and the conversation is definitely still worth it. Just wanted to put it out there that I am working behind the scenes to make sure that my microphone, everything is top notch. So stay tuned. There are many progress coming on this podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Isabella, for joining my podcast. I'm so excited to have you here to talk about singleness and the waiting season. I like to before we get on that topic, I like to talk to my guests and ask them about where they were born and to tell us like their favorite childhood memory, because I just think it's so exciting and it's a different way to get to know people. So, where were you born? And tell us your favorite childhood memory.
Hi, Lola. So I want to say thank you for bringing me on to your podcast today. I'm super excited for where this conversation is going to go, and hopefully it makes an impact to someone that listens. So to answer your question, where was I born? I was born in New Jersey, which is up north, the Northeast. And then thinking about a childhood memory of mine. So my family is Ghanaian. They come from Ghana. So I've always had that connection just to go back home. So one of my favorite memories I remember is going to Ghana when I was 2 years old. And as much as my siblings are like, what? Like you remember? I remember because it was so hot over there compared to the temperature here in the US. I remember just so much out there. Like it was a different world for me being here. So when I came back here and I was growing up here, I always had that appreciation for Ghana, being that my family's from there and just understanding the culture of there. So yeah, I wanted to share.
I like that. I'm from Nigeria, so I can understand the culture shock, but also the appreciation of like the opportunities that are available for us in the United States. So this question is different, but I still think it's fascinating to ask. What was your favorite activity as a child or passion? Some people, they like to write, read, and sometimes they still engage in those activities as an adult. But what did you enjoy doing as a child?
So as a child, I would say one of the main things I can remember that I loved to do was to paint and dance. So painting, like I'm okay with it now, but I do it like on like my free time. Dancing, I am okay with it as well. But I think like back then, because like when you're a child, you're so carefree, like when they play the music, you can just enjoy, just dance and stuff. And my family, we always used to go to like different celebrations. So in our culture, we have things such as like adoring when it comes to like when the baby's like being named, or we have the traditional weddings that we'll go to. There was always a celebration that was happening then. So dancing every time, I was always on the dance floor with my sisters or my friends and stuff, just enjoying then.
That sounds really fun. I cannot wait to get back to like weddings
Mhm.
after this pandemic is over.
Yeah.
So now we're getting into our topic, and I really listening to your podcast. I love the emphasis on waiting, and you said something on one of the episodes that said that for us as humans, sometimes a no is better than wait
Mhm.
because we know that a no is a no. Okay, what else can I do?
Yeah.
And some of us too, we also have this thought of like, I want to get married by this age. And we're like, God will want me to be married. You just feel like God will do it because He has done other things maybe according to our timeline.
Yeah.
How do you learn to trust God in your single season?
So trusting God in my single season, when I first was even like redirecting back my relationship with God, I was 21. So I just finished university. College for me was I was surrounded around different people and like relationships, people that are single, like focusing on school. So when it came to me honestly understanding the importance of relationship, I remember I came across Pastor Mike Todd's relationship goals, which that gave me a whole different perspective. Like that there is a reason why God values relationship. There is a reason why we need to get to know people. There's a reason why he needs to be at the center of that. So that kind of helped me. So I came across a challenge which was called Pray for Your Future Spouse. And then in that moment, I was like, okay, like I'm gonna pray for my future spouse and stuff. It was a different concept for me that I didn't really hear about being younger. Like I went to a traditional church. They didn't talk about their future thing. Is just like, oh, don't do this until you're married. Don't do this and all that stuff. So with that, they weren't talking about the importance of your relationship. And I felt like that was something I was missing. So when I came across that series of relationship goals and then coming across the challenge as well and having the chance to connect with other believers, I learned that I can't say I'm praying for somebody in my future to have a relationship with God when I don't really work on my own necessarily relationship. So that was something that kind of hit me because I'm like, man, as much as I want to pray for my future partner to be saved or my future partner to be listening to God and stuff, I also have that same access to God as well. So with that, I need to like pay attention to that relationship just as I would pay attention to a relationship with a friend, a family member. Like God is that important as well. So I just brought him into that my whole single process, and I understood the importance of listening to him and understanding him because it says with Jeremiah 29 verse 11, the famous quote is that he knows the plans that he has for us. So it's important for you to trust him, and just know that anything, if he can help you with certain little situations when it comes to work or something like that, he can help you with your relationships as well. Like he wants us to succeed. He wants us to do the best that we can. So yeah.
I like that revelation, especially uh, focusing on yourself and saying that I want this in a spouse. I need to focus on that too, especially the relationship with God.
Yeah.
Um, I like okay, I like other people growing up Christian, going to church, or just being a child. You have an image of like I'm gonna get married at this age, and then that age comes or pass. Or for some people, that age is approaching, and they have no prospects, so they start to. It can be a moment in your life where it shakes your faith. So, what encouragement would you have for anybody, or maybe for yourself, when you have passed that age, or the age is approaching, and you're like, maybe marriage might not be on the horizon for this age, for
Yeah.
this time period in my life? Um, yeah, any
Yeah.
kind of encouragement, or how do you process that as a Christian?
Okay, so I love that you're even asking this question because I feel like sometimes we don't really address it as much. I haven't had it being addressed before. So when you ask, did I ever have that thought of getting married at a certain age, like planning my whole timeline, okay, by this age I want to get this done, I want to get this done and stuff. Funny enough, when I think about it, I said one of the things I said when I was much younger was like, oh, I want to be engaged by 23 and married by 25. I'm past those two ages. Like I'm in my 25th year now, but when I think about it, then when I went, whatever I went through, like the things I went through at 23, if I was engaged then, I feel like it would have been an immature decision for me because I was still learning who I am in God. So I can't just necessarily bring somebody into the picture then. So I think that when I look at what God is doing in me, like right now at 25, I am like way more aware than I would have been like years before. So I think that's something that is very like intentional, and that's something that we should definitely pay attention to, is that God, like if God blesses everything that we necessarily want, like it's kind of like we'll be walking into where we need to get to prematurely, or it won't he knows that he won't give us this big task now because of how we may handle it. But sometimes you need to go through certain things, you need to learn certain lessons. So when it do come that time for you to be in where he's calling you, you have that understanding on how to approach it then. Like if I know sometimes people were like, oh, when I was like just even thinking about this, people were like, oh, I want to graduate school, like by this certain age. And there it comes that pressure that's put on them because even though maybe their body is telling them or circumstances is telling them otherwise, they'll find themselves doing something and they'll be in a place of being dissatisfied because it's like I don't feel that joy that I necessarily really need to feel in that moment because of that pressure of time. So I think like just to even encourage those that have set a timeline for them. Honestly, trust in God. Like that is a key thing I would say is trust in God and surrender your timeline, surrender the plan that you have towards Him because maybe God is working something in you, or maybe you need to heal from certain things before you get to that point of going into that next chapter.
Okay. I like what you said about awareness during this time because as someone who's studying psychology, awareness is such knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, the way that you react to yourself, the way that other people react to you, and just learning that is so valuable for our own well-being because you know what you want to work on, and also like knowing your strengths is also empowering. So be more self-aware, especially in the single season. I think that's a good time because then you're really focusing on yourself and your relationship with God. A question came to my mind, and I hope you don't mind. But sometimes I feel like, especially as Christians, you go to church, you think I might meet the person at church, and then you maybe don't end up meeting the person at church. You go to conferences, you try to go to places where it's like Christian focused, like where you believe you might meet other believers. And I think something that might also contribute to the disappointment is like I don't want to do the things that people that are not believers are doing, maybe going clubbing and things like that. We're in a pandemic now.
Yeah.
But like, how have you found that during your single season of like it's one thing to surrender to God, but to also know, okay, maybe the person's not gonna find me in my house, right?
Mhm.
So like how do you find that balance of like trusting God but still knowing that because with everything else you're like, I want a job, you will apply for a job, but you also trust God. How do you find the balance of like I'm trusting God, but also I want to be intentional of being at the right place
Yeah.
to hopefully meet the one? Because I feel like that can be very confusing for women too, because we feel like, okay, the guys to approach us. How do
Yeah.
you find that balance with conversation with your friends or even for yourself?
So oh my God, Lola, I'm so excited that you asked me this question because this was something that even yesterday I was reading. I was doing a course. So I'm part of this course called the One University. And the goal of it is for you to become the one. So it's a Christian based thing. They speak about going through certain things like understanding prayer, the importance of your past, understanding your purpose, and more other things. So one of the courses that even popped up was where are places where Christian singles can meet other people? And I'm like, listen, let me know in these gems because I feel like sometimes one thing that we always look at that we feel like we can meet like-minded people is at the church because we're Christians, we both have that belief. But when I understood that just because a person goes to church, that doesn't mean that their relationship with God is the same way that it is with you. So you have to understand that first things first, just like with friendship, you can meet people in different places to become friends with them. So apply that same concept and don't put that pressure when it comes to relationships, because you never know like where you may meet your future spouse, where you may meet your like business partner that you need to work with. So it can either be at something that you love doing. If you are a person that has all these different hobbies, maybe in the midst of you doing what you love, you'll meet somebody that you'll have a connection with. And then from there, you get to know them. Something I also learned as well was that don't put I think like one thing for us, and this is one of my Christian brothers made this comment was like, oh, he's like, oh, I feel like Christians, ladies and stuff, they focus so much on marriage. And it's like, oh, if somebody comes into the picture, are you the one? And I was like, so I know people are guilty of it. Like Lola, would you say you're guilty of that, or like have ever been?
In the past, absolutely. But like you said, what you said about not putting pressure on it is a good point. But I want you to continue speaking.
Yeah, so even with that, when he said that, like I was automatically like defensive, but I thought about it, I was like, man, I have been there at one point, was like, oh, I'm getting to know this person seems cool. But when I had to take a step back and was like, honestly, pay attention to how this person reacts to this. Pay attention to how this person says this. When I contribute this, how does this person like go about this? How are they making an impact to others around them and stuff? When you observe them as a friend, especially like when you observe them as a friend, it's important because there is no pressure on a relationship. There's no pressure to like impress you, or, oh, I need to be like this and stuff. You're generally getting to know them as an individual. So with that has definitely helped me even be very mindful in my single season on the people that I do come across, or the people that I do met. Like I've met guys that are such great people, but I know with the purpose that I'm heading with, where God is leading me, they are not called to be my purpose partner. They're not called for the person I need to be in a relationship with. They're definitely great guys. They're quality guys. So I value them in having them in my circle, but I won't automatically be like, oh, this is the one. Like God hasn't revealed, or God hasn't given me that confirmation that this is the person I'm going to take a path with. And another thing too that the Holy Spirit is like even reminding me now was that there is not only one person that you can be with. And sometimes people are like, oh, I'm waiting for that one, God's going to bring me the one. But he's given us the free will for us to choose who we want to be with in our future. One thing that people kind of like forget about is once they get into a relationship, they don't really pray much into it. Like you need to, every relationship that you get with, it's important for you to be praying about it. Like, hey, God, whatever your intention, whatever, like why this person's in my life and stuff, let it be known to me, understanding the will of the relationship. So what is the will of God for this relationship here? Is this person supposed to be my assignment? Is this person supposed to give me advice? Is this person someone that I am to help get closer to you? Those things are very important in any relationship that you go with. So yeah, that's the thing that popped into my head.
The no pressure that you talked about, I really like that, because I'm at that place where there's no pressure of like we can just be friends. There's no pressure. So you look at this as a friendship, as opportunity to talk, to have conversation with someone. The person might inspire you. They might learn something from you. You might learn something from them. And I think honestly that even makes you more confident, and because you're just yourself. And if you want to be in a relationship with anybody, you want them to really know you and be in a relationship with you, not a facade that you've put on because you just want to get married. That's a good one.
Yeah.
A couple more questions. What is the biggest lesson that you have learned during this single season? You mentioned being more self-aware and praying for your partner. Are there any other lessons that you've learned during this season of your life?
Okay. During the season, I definitely learned, and kind of even going into my story was that I learned that I needed to get to a place of understanding who I am. So I share this on another podcast, and I'm gonna even speak more on my necessarily podcast of it. Is that when I was in 2019, I got into a new role of like working, teaching, and I realized that I was so busy. I would go on different dates and stuff, get to know people. But I felt like this is not like it was distracting to me. So I took the time in 2020 and I made this decision with God. I was like, listen, God, like this whole year, I'm giving you the whole year, like in terms of not getting to any relationships, not dealing with nobody, because I want to learn you. I want to be closer to you. So I didn't know a pandemic was gonna come at that time because and I used to laugh at my friend. I'm like, man, you guys are over here stressing about like relationships. Man, I'm enjoying my time with God and stuff. And it was like kind of like understanding the importance of that relationship. So in my singles season, I learned to date myself before someone else can come into the picture. So my spiritual father always says this like, oh, like knowing yourself, would you marry you? And then some people in church would be like, hey, I don't know. On this part, we be sitting there like, I don't know, like what was that? But that's actually an important question as well, because sometimes if we don't take that time to learn ourselves, you don't want someone to define you for you. Like you have that opportunity to define who you are. So those are key things. And also the word too tells us who we are. So when you go back to the word and knowing that, listen, like I'm beautifully and I'm wonderfully made and stuff, you don't need to wait for the compliments for somebody else, because God is already speaking that into your life. So those things during my single season has helped me a lot to learn who I am, learn who Isabella is, and what are certain things that I like, what are certain things I don't like and stuff, what are goals that I have for myself and stuff. So when someone comes in the picture, all you're just doing is just like, you know yourself. Is this somebody that can fit into that picture as well? Is this somebody that can help you grow? Is this something that you know, like what the person can contribute and what they're trying to take away from you and stuff? It gives you more of a clear mindset when you are in your dating season. So yeah.
Great. So the last question is this. For the listeners of this podcast that are single in their waiting season, how would you tell them to be more intentional? You talked about growing closer with Christ, dating yourself, becoming more self-aware, praying. Are there other practical steps that you can share with listeners that are like, maybe they're dealing with disappointment or frustration, maybe they're mad at God of like, I'm waiting. They see other people getting married, even in the pandemic, people are getting married. How would you tell them to be more intentional so that the focus is still on Christ and not on the marriage or the
Yeah,
wedding?
yeah. Okay, so one of the things I would say on learning how to be intentional in your season is when you're waiting, it's not everything stops. Like the world is still going. And I think that when people are waiting, they're like, oh, you know, like I'm waiting for the one to come and stuff. But how are you positioning yourself? Are you positioning yourself to be found? Are you positioning yourself to actually get to know people? And then certain things as well, like one thing that just kind of popped in my mind was that when you're speaking about when people are like, oh, I have an interest towards somebody, but you don't know how they're gonna react and stuff. Get to know people. Like get to know people just as like, you know, an acquaintance or somebody that you can like speak to over time, and also take mental notes as well. So with that, when you're taking mental notes, like you're getting to know this person, but hey, you know, like this person actually like I don't know how to I'm trying to think of like one thing that's one is like, you know, like think like a man. Have you heard like think of a man like act like a woman? In that movie, even though it's a like Christian based movie, but he gives even like simple gems that, you know, certain things like if you think a guy's joke is so funny, right? Don't be like ah ha ha ha, you know, like you can like be mindful of it, but you can do a little giggle because it gives that guy like that confidence that hey, she's actually, you know, paying attention to what I'm doing. So certain things like that, there are so much ways. And women, even I don't know if your listeners are mainly women, but to my women, like we have all the gems, like we have all the key to so much different things. So while you're waiting, just still be active, be intentional on networking with other people, meet other people. Don't just go in an intention of I'm looking for that one person, but when you go into that place of meeting different people, get to learn them, get to know who they are, have conversations, also ask the right questions as well. And I feel like something that I learned was that me, I love asking questions. Like if it's like the simplest things, if I'm in doing an assignment or if I'm working like with somebody, I want to know the questions. I want to know the ins and outs. So one thing that's very important is asking those right questions that don't make it feel like an interview, but like you're having a conversation, like you're learning those key things and stuff. So while waiting doing that, and don't just keep yourself hitting, like I said, like position yourself where you can be seen, and when you are being seen, like you're presented in a way that, you know, you're eye catching, like to whoever the person that you're going to meet is. And I think your sister, you had an episode with your sister, and she spoke about personal styling. And I was thinking about that. That's even like great as well, because even during the pandemic, if you are to go out, yes, you have the mask on, but you can also show off and like show yourself in a way. It's like, okay, who is this lady? Like, okay, like the way she carries herself and stuff, it will still speak, like like even with the person just seeing your appearance and stuff. So those certain things.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah, so many gems. And I think for me, it's about being yourself,
Mm-hmm.
being your best too at the same time, because we're a child of God. And I love the no pressure, just meet people and be specific about your questions. I really like that. And I really enjoyed listening to your podcast, and I'm going to keep listening. It's short, the topics are very relevant.
Yeah.
So as we round up, I would love for you to share with the audience about your podcast and your social media handle, or just tell us more about yourself, whatever you would like the audience to know.
So oh my gosh, just once again, thank you so much for having me on Joy in Purpose podcast. So excited. So my podcast is called Truth by Bella. And as before we started this interview, I remember you asked me, do I go by Bella or Isabella? So when I came up with the whole name, one thing I didn't want to necessarily attach was myself, just throwing myself in there. And I can relate to you as well. I know in one of your episodes you're speaking about like not having your picture or should you and stuff. I was very intentional on how I went about it, because I knew that God was going to do something through this podcast. So me sharing the topics that I'm speaking on at the time that I'm speaking it, I want to make sure whoever listens to the podcast is impacted by it. So Truth by Bella, I speak on all gems when it comes to relationships, when it comes to entrepreneurship, our faith most importantly, and then also the life lessons that we're learning. Because I feel like if you're going through a situation and you're not able to share or take the key things from there that's building you up, you can repeat those same cycles. So it's very important that I'm like, man, people need to listen to this. And I'm always praying to make sure like this is where the Holy Spirit wants me to necessarily record on and like kind of speak about. So in order for people to connect with me, I am Truth by Bella all together on Instagram, on Facebook. I also have a page as well, Truth by Bella on there. Connect with me on there. I'm also on Clubhouse as well, which is a new platform, but I've been able just to network and just speak to people on there and also help them as well and have that understanding of who they are. And I'm Isabella Boateng on Facebook. So if you need Boateng, let me spell you that one. Is Boateng. Being the Ghanaian, like sometimes I hear different last name pronunciations. I was like, no, it's Boateng. It's Boateng for that one. But with that, I've just been just so excited. I'm so excited to connect with people and share anything that the Lord has put on my heart with them to make sure that I'm able to make an impact in their lives as well. So yeah, that's me.
I love it. I love it. I love your spirit. Thank you for coming on. I'm really grateful. I've really loved this episode. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. Thank you again for listening. Peace.